She sat under a broken wall, her knees pulled close to her chest. The sky above the camp was gray, full of dust. People walked past her like she wasn't even there. They didn't see her. Or maybe they didn't want to. Her name was Lyra, but no one had called her that in years. She was small for her age. Her bones showed under her thin skin. Her dress was torn and dirty. Her alien features were different. Small ears, glowing eyes, and soft silver skin that once shimmered. Now it looked dull and lifeless. Others in the camp called her it or creature, never girl, never female. She was only 12 when her planet was bombed. Her parents died in front of her eyes. She had run into the woods, hiding for days until a rescue ship brought her to this refugee colony on Earth. But here, no one cared. The older aliens in the camp formed groups. They protected each other. They helped each other survive, but not her. No one wanted to take care of her. She's too weak. She won't live long. Why waste food on her? That's what they whispered. At first, Lyra cried, every night. She hoped someone would hear and come sit beside her. But no one came. Her tears dried. Her voice broke. She stopped crying. She stopped speaking. Now she just sat, quiet like a stone. Flies buzzed around her. Her hands were covered in cuts from digging through trash for food. Sometimes she found a piece of old bread, sometimes nothing. The other orphans threw rocks at her and laughed. She's not one of us. They shouted. She believed them. One evening, the sun was setting. The orange light touched her face gently. She watched the shadows grow longer. Her stomach growled again. It had been 2 days since she last ate. She closed her eyes, hoping sleep would come fast, so she wouldn't feel the hunger anymore. Then, footsteps. She opened her eyes slowly. Someone was standing in front of her. She expected another rock, another kick, another insult, but it didn't come. A tall figure crouched down beside her. It was a human. She had seen humans before working in the camp, managing food, helping others. But they never talked to her, never looked at her. This one was different. He had short brown hair, kind eyes, and a soft smile. He wore a dusty jacket and carried a small bag. You okay? He asked gently. Lyra said nothing. She lowered her head. The man looked around, then opened his bag. He pulled out a piece of flatbread and a bottle of water. Slowly, he placed them in front of her. She stared at the food. He didn't push her. He didn't touch her. He just stood up and said, "It's for you." Then he walked away. Lyra waited. Maybe it was a trick. Maybe someone was watching, ready to laugh again. But no one came. She picked up the bread with shaking hands. It was fresh, warm. She took a bite and tears filled her eyes. Not because it was delicious, but because someone had cared enough to feed her. That night, she slept better than she had in years. The next day, the man came back. This time he didn't bring food. He brought a small towel and soap. "You can use these," he said. "If you want." Lyra looked at him. His voice was calm, soft like a breeze. He wasn't afraid of her. He didn't look at her like the others did. He didn't see a monster. He saw someone, but still, she didn't speak. For 7 days the man returned. Sometimes with food, sometimes with clothes. Once, he brought a tiny blanket. Every time she waited until he left before touching the gifts. She didn't trust anyone. Not yet, but something inside her was changing. On the 8th day, he came and sat beside her. He didn't say anything. He just sat in silence. Minutes passed. Then he asked, "What's your name?" She looked at him, lips trembling. She opened her mouth, but no words came. She hadn't spoken in so long. He smiled and nodded. "It's okay. I'll wait." That night, Lyra didn't eat in the dark. She sat under the stars, holding the blanket he gave her, whispering her name quietly to herself. "Lyra. My name is Lyra." She smiled. For the first time someone saw her. Not as a thing, Not as trash, but as a girl. And maybe, just maybe, something more. Lyra woke up before the sun. The morning was cold, and the air smelled like metal and old smoke. She was still holding the small blanket close to her chest. Her silver skin was warmer now, just a little. Her eyes looked toward the dirt path in the camp. She didn't know why. But something inside her hoped to see him again. And then, there he was, the same human, brown hair, strong shoulders. A face that didn't wear fear. A kindness in his eyes that didn't seem real. But today, something was different. He didn't carry food. He didn't carry gifts. He carried a chair. He placed it near her and sat down, right beside her broken wall. Close enough that she could smell soap and metal on his jacket, but not too close to scare her. Lyra sat up slowly. She watched him from the corner of her eye. He didn't say anything for a while. He just looked at the camp, the smoke, the sad faces walking by. Finally he said, "My name is Kai." His voice was deep, but soft. Like calm thunder. "You don't have to tell me yours," he added. "I'll wait until you want to." Lyra looked at him. Her lips moved, but nothing came out. Her voice was still broken inside her chest. Kai didn't get upset. He just smiled a little. Then he pulled out something from his jacket, a small notebook. He started drawing. She leaned a little curious. It was a simple sketch of her, sitting under the broken wall. He even drew the blanket. Lyra blinked. She had never been drawn before. No one had ever even looked at her like that, let alone cared to capture her on paper. "I draw people I want to remember," Kai said. She stared at him. Her small hands clenched around the blanket. Her heart felt like it was beating faster than it should. People walked by. They stared at the human sitting beside the trash orphan. One alien woman whispered, "What is he doing with that thing?" Lyra lowered her head in shame, but Kai heard them. He turned to the woman and said, loud and clear, "She's not a thing." The woman blinked, then walked away quickly. Lyra's eyes grew wide. She looked up at him, as if she couldn't believe he said that. For her. Kai looked back at her and smiled gently. That night, he left the notebook beside her. "You can keep it," he said. "You can draw too if you want." She didn't know how to draw, but she hugged it like treasure. The next morning, Kai returned. This time, he brought soap again and a small cup of warm water. "You don't have to use it," he said. "But I thought maybe you'd want to clean your face. You're allowed to feel fresh." That word allowed stuck in her mind. She wasn't used to being allowed anything. He left the cup and soap beside her and went to work in the camp's building zone. She touched the water. It felt strange, warm and soft. She washed her face slowly, carefully, and when she looked at her reflection in the metal cup, she didn't look like trash anymore. She looked like a girl. Days passed. Kai came every day. He talked more, told her stories about Earth, about the ocean, about stars that sang. Sometimes she didn't understand all the words, but she loved the sound of his voice. One day, while he was speaking, she quietly whispered, "Lyra." He stopped. "What?" She looked at him, shy but brave this time. My name," she sighed. "Lyra." Kai didn't smile big. He didn't cheer. He simply nodded. "I'm honored," he said. And Lyra's chest felt warm, like fire without pain. Later that evening, while she sat sketching a tree in the notebook, 2 alien boys came close. They threw stones at her feet. "You think the human will make you his wife?" they mocked. "You're not even a real female, just a runt." Lyra didn't move, but Kai appeared from the shadows, tall and angry. "If you throw anything again, you'll answer to me," he growled. The boys ran off. Lyra looked at him, scared. He might be angry too, but Kai knelt beside her. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he said. "I see you, Lyra, I really do." She bit her lip, trying not to cry. But one tear escaped anyway. This time, it wasn't from pain. It was from hope. The wind that morning was colder than usual. The camp's metal roofs rattled, and dust danced in the air like tiny ghosts. But Lyra didn't hide Dot. She was sitting on a wooden crate, her blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders. And for the first time in years, she was holding a pencil. She was drawing. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear, from excitement. Her lines were crooked, her shapes uneven. But on the page, slowly, the outline of a man's smile was forming. It was Kai. He had given her that notebook, that pencil, that reason to feel seen. And now, after days of silence, kindness, and slow healing, her voice had finally returned. Yesterday she had whispered her name. Today, she planned to speak more. Kai arrived before the sun reached the top of the sky. He looked tired, his clothes dusty, his eyes heavy. He had spent the night helping put out a fire on the north side of the camp. Still, he came. When Lyra saw him, her chest filled with a warmth she couldn't name. Kai sat on the crate next to her. She didn't hide her drawing this time. He glanced over and smiled. That me? She nodded. He chuckled softly. You made me look taller. Lyra gave a small sound, almost like a laugh. It surprised her. She covered her mouth, unsure. Kai didn't laugh at her. He said gently, "It's a nice sound." She looked down at the page, her voice small. I forgot how to laugh." Kai waited. Then Lyra said more, her words slow and broken. "No one ever talked to me like you." He didn't interrupt. He didn't rush. They all said I was not worth it. I believed them. Kai's jaw tightened slightly. He looked at her, really looked. They were wrong. He said, "You're still here. That means something." Lyra's eyes watered. "But I'm not like them. I'm too small, too quiet." "You're strong," Kai said. "Do you know how much strength it takes to survive what you did?" She was quiet again. Then she whispered, "They said I'm not even female, just a mistake." Kai turned to her, voice firm. "They don't get to decide who you are." Lyra's lip trembled. Her fingers clutched the edge of the notebook. "Am I a female?" Kai's reply was steady. "You're whatever you are. And from what I see, yes, you are. Brave, gentle, kind, and female." She looked at him like no one had ever said something that real to her before. Later that day, they walked together through a quieter part of the camp. Lyra hadn't walked beyond her corner in years. Her steps were slow, unsure, but Kai didn't leave her side. He showed her the small garden he was growing behind the repair tent. "Want to help me water it?" he asked. She nodded shyly. He handed her a jug. It was heavy, and her hands shook, but she didn't give up. She poured water on the dry soil. Watching the ground drink, it felt peaceful. She turned to him. "Why do you help me?" Kai took a breath. "Because I know what it's like to be alone." Lyra blinked. "You?" "My parents died when I was a teenager," he said. "I ended up in the system, cold rooms, empty food trays. People looking through me, not at me." He looked up at the sky. "I told myself, if I ever saw someone else going through that, I wouldn't walk past." Lyra's heart beat faster. She opened her mouth and said softly, "I'm glad it was you." That night, the stars were clear. Lyra sat beside the small fire near Kai's tent. She held the warm cup of soup he made. Her fingers no longer trembled when they brushed his. She looked at the fire and spoke again, this time without fear. "When I was little, my mother braided my hair every night. She used to say, 'My daughter is small, but her heart is bigger than the moon.'" Kai listened closely. "She died saving me, shielded me from the blast." Lyra's eyes burned. "I never felt like her daughter again after that." Kai moved closer. Not touching, just near. "She'd be proud," he said. Lyra finally looked up, her eyes shining like the stars. "I want to believe that." "You can," Kai said gently, "because I believe it already." For the first time in years, Lyra didn't feel like an invisible orphan. She felt like A girl, a daughter, a person, and maybe, just maybe, something more. The night was darker than usual. Thick clouds covered the moon, and a cold wind moved through the camp like a whisper. Most people had already gone inside their tents. Fires burned low. Voices were quiet, but Lyra was still outside. She sat near a broken lamp pole, hugging her knees. Her blanket was thin, and the cold made her teeth shake. Still, she didn't want to sleep. Sleep brought dreams, and dreams brought memories. Memories of a mother's arms, long gone. Of warmth that no longer existed. Her silver skin was pale in the dark. Her eyes stared at the ground. Then a sound, footsteps. Familiar. Kai. He walked slowly, holding 2 steaming cups. When he reached her, he knelt down and offered one. Herbal tea, he said. It helps with cold. Lyra took it in both hands. The cup was warm like fire, and kindness mixed into one. Kai sat beside her without a word. For a few minutes they drank in silence. Just the sound of wind, the soft hiss of tea, and the nearness of someone who cared. Then Lyra whispered, "Do you think I'll ever be normal?" Kai looked at her. His voice was calm. "You are normal, just not like them." Lyra shook her head. "They still laugh when I walk past. Some call me Skinny Bones or Ghost Girl, even today." Kai was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Want to know a secret?" She nodded. "When I first came here, they laughed at me too. Said humans were weak. Said we only help others. To feel big." Lyra blinked. "You're not weak," he smiled. "Neither are you." Suddenly, a loud shout broke the quiet. A group of teenage aliens ran past, kicking a crate and laughing. One of them stopped, pointed at Lyra, and yelled, "Hey Kai, you trying to mate with that creature?" The others burst out laughing. Lyra froze. Her hands tightened around the cup. Kai stood up, his face hard like steel. "Walk away," he said. Boys hesitated, then left. Lyra sat still. Her heart was racing. Her fingers felt numb. But then something unexpected. Kai stepped behind her, pulled off his thick coat, and gently wrapped it around her shoulders. It smelled like wood, dust, and warmth. She looked up at him, confused. "Why?" He didn't answer. With words, he sat back down. His eyes didn't look at her body, or her alien features, or the tears in her dress. He looked into her eyes. That was all. Lyra lowered her head. "No one's ever touched me like that before. Not without wanting something." "I wanted nothing," he said. "Just for you to feel safe." Her breath hitched. A lump formed in her throat. She had no words for what this moment felt like. It was not fear. It was not pain. It was comfort. Real comfort. Later that night, Lyra returned to her tiny tent. She didn't remove Kai's coat. She kept it on, like a shield. She sat on her bed, held the fabric close, and closed her eyes. Inside her chest, something cracked. Not in a painful way. It was like a wall breaking. She remembered her mother's arms, the warmth, the love. And suddenly, she started crying. Soft, quiet tears. The kind that healed instead of hurt. She wasn't crying because she was alone. She was crying because, for the first time in years, someone had cared enough to give her warmth without asking anything in return. The next morning, the sun returned. Lyra walked toward Kai's work area, still wearing his coat. He looked up and smiled. "It suits you." She blushed. Then she did something bold. She walked closer and placed a small flower in his hand. It was bent and weak, picked from a dying plant. But Kai looked at it like it was gold. "It's all I have," she said. "It's more than enough." He replied. They stood there quietly, holding that tiny flower between them. And in that small moment, something big began to grow. People still stared. They still whispered. But Lyra didn't look down anymore, because someone had touched her without fear, held her without shame, and made her feel like she belonged, not just as an orphan, not just as a female, but as Lyra. The evening light made the camp glow, orange and gold. The wind was gentle now, brushing through tents and trees, as if the world itself had softened for a while. Lyra stood beside a water barrel, rinsing her hands. Her silver skin, once dull, now caught the sunlight in a quiet shimmer. Her hair, brushed and tied back with a cloth, moved with the breeze. The coat Kai gave her still hung around her shoulders like a promise. She didn't know he was watching. Kai stood a few feet away, hammer in hand, working on a broken table. But his eyes kept drifting toward her. There was something different today. Something he couldn't quite explain. She wasn't the quiet orphan anymore. She was becoming someone else. Not just alive, but radiant. Not just a girl, but a young woman. That morning, Lyra had helped organize food packs. Her hands moved quickly, her head held higher than before. Some of the younger children followed her, asking questions, copying her. She answered softly, kindly. She didn't hide her voice anymore. Even some of the older aliens noticed. One woman whispered, "Is that the same orphan from Sector D? She looks different," another replied. But only Kai knew why, because kindness had changed her. And now, the world was beginning to see what he had seen from the start. Later, Lyra walked over to Kai with 2 tin cups of tea. She offered him one without a word. He smiled and took it. They sat beside the repair shed, their legs stretched out in the dirt. "Tomorrow is the camp's unity celebration," Kai said. "Food, music, some awkward dancing." Lyra tilted her head. "Do you dance?" "Not well," he chuckled, "but I try." She looked down at her cup. "Do they allow people like me to join?" Kai turned to her. "What do you mean?" "People like you," Lyra hesitated. "Aliens who were rejected. Orphans, unwanted ones." Kai was silent for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. He opened it carefully. It was a list. "At the bottom," he said, "is your name. I added it myself." Lyra stared at it. "You put me there?" "I told them if you're not invited, I'm not going." She looked at him, eyes wide. "Why?" She whispered. He looked at her, really looked. "Because you deserve to be seen." The celebration began with lights strung across the dusty streets, tables filled with simple foods. People laughed, danced, clapped. Lyra stood near the edge, unsure. She wore a clean dress Kai had found for her, soft blue, a bit too big, but beautiful. Her hair was braided. Her eyes were full of light. Some stared. Some whispered. But no one said a word out loud. Then Kai walked toward her, smiling. "You came," he said. "I was scared," she admitted. He held out his hand. "Still scared?" She looked at it, then slowly placed her hand in his. "No," she said. "Not with you." They walked through the crowd. Music played. A slow rhythm. Some humans danced with aliens. Some laughed at how different their steps were. Kai looked at Lyra. "Want to try?" She looked at her feet. "I don't know how." He stepped closer. "Just follow me." She nodded. And there, under hanging lights and open stars, Kai and Lyra danced. Her hands in his. Her smile full of quiet joy. The world, for the first time, didn't feel sharp. It felt gentle. When the song ended, they walked away from the crowd, into the quieter part of the camp. Lyra stopped under a tree. The leaves above them whispered like old friends. "I never thought anyone would want me," she said. "Not like this." Kai looked into her eyes. "Then let me be the first," Lyra blinked. "The first what?" "The first to want you, not out of pity, but out of choice." She didn't speak. Her heart thudded in her chest. He reached out slowly and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was soft, respectful. "You're beautiful, Lyra." Her breath caught. No one had ever said that word to her before. Beautiful. Not strange. Not weak. Not trash. Just beautiful. They stood in silence, the space between them filled with new understanding. Something had changed. And this time, She wasn't afraid of it. Asterisk. The celebration was over. The lights had gone dark. Music had faded. Laughter was replaced by silence and stars. The cap had fallen asleep. But Lyra couldn't. She sat alone on the same wooden crate near Kai's tent, holding the soft blue dress in her hands. Her bare feet touched the cool ground. She was quiet, still. But inside, her chest was full of thunder. Everyone had seen her dance. Everyone had seen the human take her hand. They had stared. And they would whisper more tomorrow. And worst of all, she had felt something. Something. She didn't understand. Something both warm and terrifying. Love? Longing? Or just the fear of losing it? The tent flap moved. Kai stepped out, rubbing the back of his neck, surprised to see her. Couldn't sleep? He asked gently. Lyra shook her head. He didn't go back inside. Instead, he came and sat beside her on the crate. The moonlight touched her face. She looked tired. Not from the day, but from everything she had carried for years. Kai didn't speak first this time. She did. Why me? Her voice cracked. Out of everyone in this camp, why did you stop for me? He turned to her slowly. Because I saw someone who was invisible to others, he replied. And I remember what that feels like. Her eyes shimmered. But I wasn't just invisible, she whispered. I was hated, called names. Some said I wasn't even a real female. That no male would ever want to touch me. Kai's fists clenched. They hurt you with words. That's violence too. Lyra stared at the ground. It worked. I started believing them. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Even tonight, when I danced with you, I kept thinking, you're only being kind. You don't really see me like that. I do, he said without hesitation. She blinked. You see me as what? She asked. Kai turned, and his eyes held no confusion. As a young woman with a heart stronger than anyone I've met. As someone who lived through hell and still wakes up every morning. As someone who deserves to be held, not out of mercy, but because she is worth it. That broke her. Her chest collapsed inward. A sob escaped her lips before she could stop it. She covered her face, trying to hold it in, but the tears kept coming. Kai, she whispered. I've never been held without fear. He moved closer, slowly, carefully. I won't move unless you want me to, he said. But if you want to know what safety feels like, I can show you. Lyra didn't answer. She just leaned into him. And Kai wrapped his arms around her. Not tightly, not possessively, but like someone who had all the time in the world and no intention of letting her fall apart alone. She cried into his chest for a long time, silent, shaking tears. Kai didn't speak. He didn't shush her. He just held her, strong and still, while the storm passed. When she finally pulled away, her face was damp, her eyes red. But she was breathing easier. I'm sorry, she whispered. He shook his head. Don't ever be sorry for feeling. Lyra looked down at her hands. I didn't even know I could cry like that anymore. You were saving it, he said. For someone who would understand. She looked up at the stars. I used to think I was born wrong, she said softly. Too small, too soft, too weak. Other girls, they were chosen. Mated, protected. I was thrown away. You weren't born wrong, Kai replied. You were born into a broken world. Then he took her hand gently. But now you're in a new part of it. She looked into his eyes. Am I really allowed to feel wanted? He smiled, not with his lips, but with his soul. Lyra, I wanted you the moment you said your name. They stayed like that for a while. Two shadows. Under the stars, sitting close. Not lovers yet. Not strangers anymore, but something sacred in between. The fire in Lyra's chest wasn't fear now. It was trust. Later, before she went back to her tent, she turned and asked, Will you be here tomorrow? Kai nodded. I'll be here as long as you want me to be. She smiled, a soft, sleepy smile full of quiet joy. I hope tomorrow never ends. It had been exactly 1 year since Lyra met him. 1 year since she sat under that broken wall, hungry, silent, and forgotten. 1 year since a human, just one, saw her, not as trash, not as a mistake, but as someone worth saving. Now, the camp was preparing for the yearly gathering, the new sky ceremony, a day to honor peace between species, and a future built together. Lyra stood before a mirror made from polished scrap metal. Her fingers shook as she tied a ribbon around her waist. It wasn't fear this time. It was something different. She was nervous. Because today, she wouldn't be invisible anymore. Today, the girl they once ignored would walk in front of everyone. Outside, whispers had already started. Is that really her? The orphan? She looks like a proper young female. They weren't mocking her now. They were surprised. Because today, she didn't just look different, she was different. Lyra wore a soft silver dress. Her hair was woven with tiny flowers. Her steps were slow but confident. Her eyes, they held power, but she didn't care about their stares anymore. She only searched for one face in the crowd. Kai. She found him standing near the garden he had built. He was waiting like always. When he saw her, he froze. His breath caught in his throat. She looked like a dream he never thought would walk toward him. Lyra, he whispered. She smiled. Do I look strange? No, he said. You look seen. She reached out and took his hand. Walk with me? She asked. Anywhere, he replied. Together, they walked to the center of the camp where the council had gathered. And then something happened that no one expected. The head speaker, an elder alien, raised his hand and said, "This year, a name has been added to the ceremony list, a name we once ignored." The crowd looked confused. He continued, "She was once called useless, invisible, even non-female, but she proved us all wrong. With kindness, with strength, and with a heart bigger than any title." He turned to the crowd and called out, "Lyra of Sector D, please step forward." Gasps moved through the gathering. Lyra froze. She looked at Kai. He nodded. "You earned this." She stepped forward. Slowly. Alone. But she didn't shake. She didn't hide. She stood in front of the entire camp. Not as a charity case, not as a shadow, but as a woman. The elder placed a soft woven sash over her shoulders. "This," he said, "is for those who remind us what dignity looks like." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but this time, they didn't fall from pain. They were the tears of someone reclaiming their place in the world. After the ceremony, people came to her, not to mock her, not to throw stones, but to ask for her help, to say thank you, to finally apologize. "I'm sorry I didn't speak to you before," said one alien girl. "I thought you were weak." "I was wrong," said another. "You make us proud," said a woman, placing a small flower into Lyra's hand. But none of it mattered more than what came next. That evening, as the sun fell behind the hills, Lyra and Kai walked back to the same wooden crate where they'd shared so many nights. She sat down and looked at him. "I never thought I'd live to feel proud." Kai knelt in front of her. "You didn't just live, Lyra," he said. "You rose, you shined, you made the world see you." Lyra looked down. Even now, part of me asks, why me? Kai took her hand warm and firm. "Because from the very first moment, I didn't see an orphan. I didn't see a weak alien girl. I saw you, the woman you were always meant to be." Tears filled her eyes again. "Do you still want me?" He smiled, pulling something from his pocket. It was a ring, not gold, not silver, but carved wood, smooth and strong. He placed it in her palm. "Don't just want you," he said. "I choose you." Lyra pressed the ring to her chest. "And I choose you," she whispered. "Not because you saved me, but because you waited. You believed." He stood, and she stood with him. They kissed soft, slow, like a promise. And from that day on, the camp never called her ghost or trash again. They called her by her name. Lyra. The girl who was once forgotten, the woman who rose. Female only one man had seen from the very beginning, and he never looked away.